Hi, welcome. We are some of the NUSD mental health professionals within our district. We wanted to first acknowledge May as Mental Health Awareness Month. So we were able to review some questions that were submitted via a survey, and we're hoping to take some questions live today. Thank you so much for those of you who responded and will respond to our questions today. Sending questions and comments, we really appreciate it, and we're hoping that we can address some of those as we go.
And a Spanish language version of this will be offered on May 12th at 4 p.m. I will be there, as well as our newcomer counselors, Corina Cuca and Marta Posada. En español vamos a hacer lo mismo el martes, el 12 de mayo a las 4. Voy a estar allí haciendo lo mismo que estamos haciendo hoy con los profesionales Corina Ocuca y Marta Posada. Y si tenéis más preguntas en español, pueden ponerlos, también pueden dárselos antes.
And so we can introduce ourselves. My name is Arzu Iranipur. I'm the school psychologist for Novato High School.
I'm Jennifer Harris. I'm primarily based at Linwood Elementary School, which is our dual immersion elementary school, and I'm also, I assist other students in the district bilingually, mostly.
And my name is Tom Schmidt. I'm a school psychologist at Olive Elementary School and Sinaloa Middle School. So before we get started, we do want to acknowledge that this is sort of a collaborative effort across a lot of different mental health professionals at NUSD, including our newcomer counselors, clinical social workers, and counselors in general, as well as the entire school psychologist team. So one of the major topics that's sort of come up, now that we're 8 weeks into this distance learning model is, how do we support our kids now? The needs of our kids now looks a lot different than the needs of our kids at the beginning of this. And so the first thing that we really have talked about is the idea of normalizing that this process is changing, normalizing the process that everybody's sort of struggling with this in their own way. And it's hard, and accepting and finding acceptance in the fact that the change is difficult to manage is one of the first most basic steps to sort of acknowledging, to helping support your student. And one of the suggestions that we kind of have now is really to have a renewed focus on things like sleep hygiene, setting a wake time for your student, sticking to it, setting a bedtime for your student and sticking to it. Basic things like ensuring that you open the windows and you've got sunlight in your student's room. But then also other things that are non-tech related. The bulk of somebody's day right now involves a lot of technology. And so to the best of your ability, encouraging your students to do things like gardening, be it inside or out, constructing puzzles, construction of really any sort. So encouraging those types of things is really paramount right now. And one of the questions that came in through our survey prior to this was the idea of, helping your student clearly express their emotions. A lot of times, things come out as misdirected anger. And so how do we manage that?
One of the things to kind of consider is that this is a time that can be considered loss for a lot of our students. It's a time of grief. Grief for not being able to be with friends, grief for the normalcy that they had before, being able to go into school. For a lot of our students, school is a safe haven for them, a place where they are able to socialize and be free and learn things. So being able to acknowledge that the loss that's happening right now is something that we're all feeling, and it's a collective loss that we have, and just again being able to normalize that for a child that might not be able to put those thoughts or those feelings into words.
Mm-hmm. And students, we're not alone in this, and that's something that we need to remember as well. A lot of our students are not finding the same level of comfort on Zoom as they do in the classroom. Their interactions are different. It's awkward to see yourself on camera. Some of the younger kids can't focus on anything but that, and some of the older kids are more self-conscious, possibly because of it, about their environment, and also, sitting in a counselor's office and being able to open up. It's a different experience virtually, obviously, and we have to we have to just accept and validate that we're all doing this together, and it's a learning process for all of us. It's new for everyone.
And the grief process, as we all know, sort of involves, it's a cycle. There are a bunch of different things that sort of don't go in a linear order. There's confusion, there's resistance, there's happiness, and so it's really it's a gamut. And so on any given day and any given month or in any given hour, your student can be really expressing a range of emotions. And again, this is normal. It's uncomfortable, but it's normal.
And I think it kind of, to piggyback off Tom, there's a lot of questions about when we'll be able to open schools back up, when we'll be able to go out with friends and go to restaurants and go to the movie theaters. And so there's so much uncertainty in this time, and I think that, again, sort of adds to the level of stress and the level of frustration and anxiety and sadness that we're all experiencing, and in particular our students who might, again, not have the language or the words to be able to express that. Another question that we had a few questions about how teachers can support students. It's a difficult time to be a teacher, to be able to teach a student via Zoom. We are asking a lot of our teachers right now, and so we recognize that teachers, for us, we consider teachers the front lines for being able to support our students emotionally, support their feelings in the classroom, and that just becomes all the more challenging when we are not able to be in front of our students, when we're not able to see them. We have students who aren't turning their cameras on Zoom, and so how do you know if your student is struggling? How do you know to help that student? And so one of the things I think it's important for us to know is that we are kind of in line with our culture of caring that Novato Unified believes in. Wellness and mental health is a collaborative effort. So it includes our teachers, our campus supervisors, our families, our mental health practitioners. It's a collective effort. And so everyone who has experience with a student, everyone who is involved in a student's life when they are at school, when they're in the community, we all have influence on how what their wellness looks like. And so it's important to just kind of recognize that. And it takes different forms. So we're in different roles. My role is different than a teacher's role, than is different than a parent's role. But all equally important. And so I think it's just important for teachers, for all of us to remember that a student having one trusted adult on campus that they feel like they can talk to if they need to, or just be there to support them, it provides a sense of safety and security for a student, and provides a sense of connection. And so just knowing that that is your role, is to be able to just be there for a student. Sometimes just saying hi and a smile might be the difference between a student feeling connected and not.
Yeah, and I think the connection between student and teacher is a huge thing right now, and it's something like, in site-based learning, a teacher might come to one of us in our offices with a concern, or a student might come with a concern about their friend. And while we don't have the physical capability of doing that right now, the way the sort of form that it's taken is more so a teacher has the ability to reach out to us for help, for advice, for suggestions. So that connection, that conversational connection between the student to the teacher, student to us, is still very much there. It looks different, it is different, but it's still something that's still going on.
And I think to add to what you're saying, we don't hesitate in reaching out if you're a teacher who has a concern, or a parent who, there's a possible concern. The more communication you have with, the people that, if you feel as though you're not able to know what to do next, then we're still here. We're just not physically together.
Yeah, absolutely.
So something that we just need to recognize is that there are so many issues beyond our control right now. For example, how much time your child has with their teacher, that one-to-one interaction, how much time your child has maintaining their social interactions on a regular basis. The workload and how much is expected of a student, as well as how much that looks different in comparison to what you have in the classroom, because that will look different, especially more so for some than for others. So really, there's a different level of comfort to be virtual, and in comparison to what we see in the classroom, and we just have to recognize that is going to be the case, and that's normal. As I'm a parent as well, as parents, we need to remember that the more we can normalize what's happening right now, the more safe our children feel. And really, part of that is what we've been saying, validating those feelings. We ourselves are going through a lot of the same feelings that our children are. It just might look different because we have different life experiences and perspectives. But really, the most proactive and supportive thing you can do is to really, first of all, recognize what you're feeling, recognize that you're feeling stressed about it possibly, and also try to model the acceptance. Even if you are in disagreement or your reaction is resistant to whatever decisions are made that are outside of your control, or whatever is, the environment is outside of your control, to just acknowledge that, model the acceptance of that, even if you are resistant to it yourself. And you'd be surprised how much that supports our kids. And
Yeah, it's no dark secret that kids pick up on the things that their students are expressing. The kids pick up on the emotions and the experiences of their parents. So I think in the same way as a kid might pick up on anxiety or sadness from a parent, they also pick up on negativity and expressions of negativity. So even though, again, like you said, it might be authentic to the adult, it's kind of important to model something different.
Focus on what you can that's positive, if that's helpful, and what is within our control, and just accept the rest. And I just wanted to actually just go back to what I said prior, that we just have to give ourselves permission that this is a learning process for all of us. Perfection is not something that we're going to attain unless we look back and see it later. But yeah, we're all able to be supportive if we just remember that.
So one of the other things that has come up, a main theme or a topic is, mental health support that is provided at the school sites. And so, clearly we're not at the school sites, and oftentimes folks don't know that we have a presence on each campus at NUSD. And so the question of how is a student going to receive help? How is a family going to receive help? While things are different, we're still very much here. So typically in a school and site-based learning, we might have a contracted agency that we can provide counseling services to a student. And those agencies still very much exist, but at this point, if you are looking for something or looking for some sort of mental health or counseling support for a student, we'd advise that we can do one of two things. You can contact your insurance carrier and ask for a list of providers in your area. And then the other thing, if insurance isn't an option, which it isn't for everybody, totally understandable, we have a list of names and numbers of agencies that are local to us who do provide those services directly. So while in site-based learning, we might be able to be the conduit for outside counseling with our students, now, especially given we only have 5 weeks left or however many weeks left, the best way to get that support and to get that quickly is to contact these agencies directly. And we'll send out a document with the names and contact info for those agencies. But it's just important to reiterate that we are still here. We haven't gone anywhere, and we are still available to help teachers, students, staff, and families.
And so if you are concerned about your own student, a friend of yours, teachers, if you're concerned about students, it looks different at the different schools, and so kind of the easiest way to just think about it is to contact your administrator. let them know that there's a student that you're concerned about. Parents, you can start with a teacher. You can contact an administrator. At the high schools, we have school counselors that, across the 4 years get to know our students very well. And so they would be a great point of contact and can help support during this time, can help bridge the gap between kind of services that might be warranted for a student. In addition to sort of a follow-up that we want to do with this with some resources, if you go to NUSD.org, on that front page, sort of at the top right, there's a toolbar and it says wellness. And if you just click on that, we have a list of local resources, national resources, some tips for parents, for teachers, for students as well, that I think could be really beneficial for you to take a look at if you have any questions about kind of sort of how to receive some of that support.
Another question coming in.
All right.
So the question is, can schools provide letters to insurance companies so that students can get support from their insurance companies?
It's a good question.
So the question is, can the school provide letters to the insurance companies in order to ensure that the student gets support from their insurance carrier?
That is an excellent question. I have no idea. I would say that might be a question for maybe an administrator or the district office. That's not something that I know.
I mean, I think the way that our interaction, if a student has an outside provider or an outside counselor through an insurance agency, we often have what's called a release and exchange of information so that we can contact and connect and have open communication with that outside provider. But in terms of submitting a letter, either recommending or whatever, I agree that we don't have an answer to that question, but it is a very good question.
We can pose that question to the administration.
The next question is, someone's wondering if school psychologists or counselors can attend whole class Zooms for all students to share coping strategies and skills.
That's a really good question. Absolutely.
So the question was, can school psychologists and/or counselors attend whole class Zooms to assist in students being able to share their own coping strategies and for us to assist in that?
Yeah, I know at the high school we have a restorative justice specialist who she has jumped into several Zoom classrooms and done meditation with students, which has been really cool. She's done that in sort of counseling groups as well. I know several of the psychs jump into classrooms and can support teachers in various ways, and I think that that's kind of sort of happening at different sites. But absolutely, that's a great way to... Our sort of goal is to provide support to students with the least intrusive impact. And so if we can help support kids within the classroom we might, maybe not in a Zoom, but we might be able to reach 30 kids or so. And that's a preferred method for us to be able to teach a group of students how to use coping strategies. And then when you're able to do that, you're also showing the teacher in that classroom, and that teacher can use that as a reinforcement. And so if you have a student who's looking anxious or feeling stressed out, that teacher might be able to sort of calm that student down by reminding them, remember when we did the meditation, so how about some deep breaths and different things like that. So absolutely, and it's a great suggestion.
I feel like just to add to what you're saying, we can speak for the school psychologists, I'm sure, in saying that we are comfortable in providing that for student and teachers that feel like that would be helpful. The one thing I wanted to mention was, I did mention this a little bit earlier, we also have to remember that we can't have the same expectations for all students. Some students are not as comfortable sharing on Zoom as others, and we have to just acknowledge that and accept that. I think that's really important to remember.
The next question. Just one more question right now. Are there any other emergency services for students expressing thoughts of self-harm?
Are there any emergency services, any other emergency services available for students who are expressing self-harm? Is the question.
Yeah. I would say right off the bat, if you are concerned about your student, your child, the first place to go is 911. You can call them and say exactly what's going on, and they will be able to direct you and come assess your student. We will send out some additional information, some resources, mobile crisis unit, which is in Marin County, and there's some other Buckaloo suicide hotline that we would encourage families and students to use if they feel they're at risk for suicide, at risk for self-harm. If you are a teacher and you're concerned about a student, contact your administrator as soon as possible and let them know what the concerns are, and there is a protocol in place to contact one of us, one of the school counselors, to assess a student. And so on the wellness page on our website, we have a list of crisis phone numbers, but again, we're hoping to follow this up with some more information and just a one-pager where you're able to kind of access that information.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add, the thought of calling 911 can be sort of alarming. It sort of assumes that there's going to be helicopters and lights and ambulances and all that stuff that are going to rush to your house, and it's very much not that way. As we all know, we work with Novato PD, specifically school resource officers, who they themselves are trained in doing a risk assessment or suicide risk assessment. And I believe that in addition to them, the other people who work for NPD are trained as well. So it's definitely a good resource. It's if there is a direct or if there's a concern for the immediate care of somebody or for somebody's immediate safety, it's definitely something that you shouldn't be shy about.
Yeah. So seems like those are the questions for now.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we want to cover before we sort of wrap it up? Just looking at our notes here.
One of the things I didn't mention that I was going to is that from what we understand, teachers really miss their students. So I know it might feel as though students are missing that interaction and it's one-sided. It's not. I just wanted to validate those feelings. I know that there are teachers that are going to be also watching this and have those same feelings, and just that's normal for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I do one of the things we've touched on it in various ways, but the idea of students having difficulty sitting and engaging in Zoom, and oftentimes it results in sort of tantruming behavior or volatile emotions or a real sort of just a staunch resistance to just engaging in school. And oftentimes it's parents will ask, how do we solve that problem? How do we figure that out? How do we make things better? And the one piece of advice that I always like to give to parents is that when a student is in that emotional state, nothing productive is going to happen. Nothing productive is going to happen. And it's sort of there's really a neurological basis for that. And so the best way to approach that and to address that is to give time, to give space, and to revisit that conversation at a time when both parties, both parents and student, are in a calm space. And it starts with empathy, kind of understanding the perspective of the student, and then it goes on to the parent weighing in and kind of giving their perspective on the problem, not layering in other problems, but sort of being an active listener. And then it kind of concludes with how can we make this better? Like, this is gonna happen in the future. This is the Zoom, the online, the distance learning is really something that everybody's struggling with. So when this sort of outburst comes again, or when you feel triggered, how are we as parent and you going to address this? And I think the more predictability that you can build into that kind of dynamic, the better things are going to go.
Mm-hmm. That's really well said.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
feel like imagining, I have young kids, and imagining not long ago when my child was crying, what did I do? Did I try to explain why they got hurt, or tell them it's okay, you'll be fine? No, you just you let them cry, you hold them. Holding looks different when we get older, but it's the same idea,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's just sort of like these are feelings, and that's okay, and we'll give that space, and then we'll move forward after that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. See.
And no more questions?
So do you want to?
Do her.
Yeah. So, first of all, thank you to everybody who's watching. Thank you to everybody who has participated in giving us questions beforehand. Thank you for everybody who sort of contributed to this process, the team of school psychologists here, the newcomer counselors. We would just kind of want to wrap up by saying, kids are resilient, a lot more so than we often give them credit for. And as difficult as everything is right now, we're gonna come out of it. And just to be encouraged and optimistic as best you can, and to be consistently, positive again as best you can.
And another thing that I'd like to remind us is that we, as parents, also need to engage in our own self-care, and that's really important. It's important for us. It's important for our families. So whatever that looks like for you, part of that, I think, for most of us, is to remember that we have to we can't hold ourselves to too high of expectations. And so that's not only, within your own, whatever is happening for you in your world, but also with your students, your children, and to know that things are just going to be different, and to understand that. But also doing things that are relaxing to you, and whatever that looks like. That could be something creative, that could be something just mellow, but self-care, just, exploring that for ourselves is really, really important. And then we can model that for our kids.
And also just know that the return to school is a primary concern for us moving forward. And we, as mental health practitioners, along with, as we talked about, our partners, the counselors, we're working at our school sites. We're looking forward to being able to provide support to our students, to our families, to our staff. Once we're back on site, we'll be doing some work behind the scenes until then, but we really do look forward to continuing to advocate for the mental health needs of our kiddos, and supporting all of our collective wellness. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for participating. Thank you.
Thank you so much.